Hi, welcome to Manas Shield YouTube channel. Before we start, kindly subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thank you. Let's start the video. If you haven't watched the previous video, I'll link it in the description box, or you can click here. Tensura Volume 19. Chapter 1. The First Battle. Rimuru's Arrival. The place where we transported was extremely frigid. A world of silver. It was as if we had wandered into Gi's castle. I had tried to use the magic transfer circle, but the spell did not work. Therefore, I used spatial transportation to reach the limit of what I could see with my surveillance spell Argus, and was greeted by a stinging cold air. It was freezing to the core. It must have been that. I was able to nullify the cold, but the fact that I still felt a chill was definitely due to Velzard's influence. There was a presence in the air that made the air tremble, telling me that this was definitely a battlefield. The greatest source of power was coming from the battlefield, where Gi and Velzard were facing each other. They had created a deadly space, where no one could intervene. So, I'd just leave that part alone. I thought I felt someone looking at me, but I just ignored it. I felt like I had been hit by a wave of anger saying, "You bastard, you just ignored me," but it wasn't good to overthink things. I'm just an extra, so it's probably best if I don't intervene. I could feel someone's dismay, but my conclusion remained unshakable. Jumping into a situation that you know is dangerous is not a choice that a wise man should make. On that note, I should find out where I can intervene. The next option is, let's see, it's Diablo. His opponent is Zulario, so let's ignore that one too. Oh well. It's Diablo, so it should be fine to just leave it to him. If he can't handle it, then there's nothing I can do about it. No, that's not. Chick. You don't understand, Seal-san. I've noticed recently that Diablo's been slacking off whenever I'm watching him. He's probably not aware of it, but it feels like he's not working, because he wants to see what I can do. I see, that makes sense. Oh, it's been quite a while since I last beat Seal-san to the punch. I'm feeling good, but I'll just go ahead and give instructions to everyone. Leave the outside alone, we're heading for Leon. It looks like there are a few battlefields, so please deal with them as you see fit. Benimaru, Sae, Ranga, and Kumar nodded at my decision. Roughly speaking, this was an emergency. For the time being, I decided that it would be best if we all went together. By the way, was there another battlefield out here? There was. I could sense a thick magical residue near the ground. But my instinctive intuition told me to ignore it. Why was that? Without any reason or evidence, I decided to follow it. Well, now was not the time to be troubled, so I decided to take immediate action. Everyone seemed to have no objection, and we all began moving towards the castle. The visibility was terrible. I was doing my best to activate universal perception, but I couldn't even get a sense of distance. The reason was simple: Velzard's snowstorm was contaminated with magicules. That's why the natural effects nullification was disabled. As long as we were sensing distance using the reflection of magicules in the atmosphere, everything would become ambiguous if the space was filled with magicules. So, all we could do was to move in the direction where the magicules were shaking. That ended up being the correct answer, and we soon reached Leon's castle. The inside of the castle was better. I was relieved to have my sight back. And so, I looked for signs of battle. Alright, I've detected a sign of Leon. Benimaru and I will head out, so you guys go support the rest of the battlefields. Understood. I understand. Leave it to me. Without any objection to my order, Ranga, Kumar, and Sae moved out. Without even seeing them off, I took Benimaru and activated spatial transportation. In any case, the moment we entered the castle, the signs of battle swelled greatly. A chilling presence. The energy was so intense that it exceeded my current full power, and I decided that this would be dangerous. The scene at the end of the transport was a true race against time. I performed thought acceleration at several 100,000,000 times the speed, and tried to read the situation. Lapis and Tyr were protecting a woman, led by Yuki, who had summoned up the last of his energy. The woman looked familiar to me. Yuki's secretary, she must have been the possessed form of the demon, Lord Kazlam. Her name was Kigali, and the last time I saw her, she had been under the control of Lieutenant Kondo. I don't know what had happened to her, but she seemed to have regained her free will. No, the current problem was not that, but rather the gigantic fireball that the enemy was about to unleash. Strengthened by an ultimate skill, its heat and destructive power had been increased to such an extent that it could shatter even the spirit. In other words, it would even destroy the soul. And it had already been unleashed. I would be safe. My void god, Azathoth, could eat up the power of destruction, so I was well protected against the release. Naturally, Benimaru was also under its influence, so there was no need to worry. However, Yuki and the others, who were exposed to the gigantic fireball and took the direct hit from the front, had already been damaged. Then, they were already. No. If you eat them with void god, Azathoth, or do it. Before I could even finish listening to the entire explanation, I gave the order. The note I'm at all, Seal-san took action. And yet, however, the result was a huge explosion that blew away the castle. Yuki was swallowed up by the light and disappeared. And so did Laplace. The large explosion that distorted space was largely suppressed by my power. However, for the two people who received a direct hit, I've given you a lot of trouble up until now, but I didn't dislike you, Rimuru-san. Same here. I'm relieved that you're here now. I leave the rest to you. I felt like I heard voices speaking. I think it was an auditory hallucination. Yuki and Laplace disappeared without a trace. Certainly, they had always been a pain in the ass. But Yuki was still a fellow countryman that Shizu-san had entrusted to me. And then there was Laplace, who I thought I could get to know in a way that I couldn't hate him now. Both of them are stubborn, so the possibility of them being alive somewhere is not zero. There's no need to console me. It's obvious from this situation that it was just a fantasy. But even so, those words brought me back to reality. I thanked Seal-san and changed my mind. Yuki and Laplace had been sacrificed, but they had nothing to do with the victory goal in the first place. Besides, they were the most stubborn people I knew, so there was still the possibility that they might be alive. In that case, now wasn't the time to get sentimental. I still had work to do. It would be an insult to them if I didn't do my job and became consumed with regret. The time that Yuki and Laplace earned was not wasted. The barrier that Yuki and Laplace had put up with all their strength, with Tia risking her life to support it with all her might, had saved Kigali from serious injury. I knew this because I was still observing her condition by isolating her in my stomach. It was actually Seal-san who was doing this, meaning that as a result of Yuki and Laplace's actions, I was able to rescue Tia and Kigali in time. After confirming the safety of the two, I turned my attention to the enemy. One of them was Feldway. And the other one was Footman, or actually not. It was a different person. Leon, who I had been wondering about, was fighting someone unknown. No, her face looked just like Eltan's, but I could sense that she was a different person. She seemed to be very strong just like Eltan, but she also felt different by nature. I could see that she was an ally, so I left the questions of who she was for later. She appeared to be fighting on equal terms with Leon, so I decided to leave this to her and concentrate on the enemy. I expected you to go after Leon, but you moved slower than expected. For the time being, I would stir things up. I had no intention of showing it, but I felt sorry that I couldn't save Yuki and the others. I was so angry with myself that I didn't intend to show any mercy. Who are you? Just who are you to interfere with me, you unpleasant infidel? Jahal, that's one of the most important figures, Demon Lord Rimuru. You do well to remember that. The man who appeared to have taken over Footman was named Jahal. He's also the one who launched the attack, so he was definitely a bad guy. 2 enemies, and 2 of us. I would take care of Feldway, and Benimaru would take care of Jahal. However, it looked like Jahal, was it? I will deal with him. Oh, Benimaru-kun. He was so happy to be here that I could not even get worried about him. There was no use worrying about things now. I decided to let things happen as they will. I didn't expect to have to fight here, but it will save me a lot of trouble. That's my line. I responded and drew my sword. I'm going to do it. I'm seriously going to do it. Mekal is difficult to defeat because he has Castle Guard, but fortunately, he is not here. I wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to take out Feldway alone. And I am the type of person who does not hesitate once my decision has been made. In a drawn-out battle, there is no such thing as interruptions. In such a case, you should decide the game with a killing blow. That's right, I had prepared it for such a situation. In all times and places, it was the thing that all shounen manga protagonists had, the sure kill technique. Imaginary blade. If someone were to ask what the strongest sword technique against an individual was, the answer would be obvious. It was the mult slash, which could even slice through the spirit. Then, if someone were to ask what the best sword technique against an individual was, the answer would be the Oboro Hayaka Rairan. Combining both of these characteristics was Benimaru's special move, the Oboro Kakyun Hayaka Rairan, which can be considered as sure kill technique. This sword art was the highest form of the technique, but with the ultimate skill added to increase its power. Therefore, its power had been raised to the realm of shattering the spirit, making it comparable to the melt/slash technique. There is no doubt that it was the strongest in terms of both power and skill. And then, I had a thought. I can't lose to Benimaru, you know. So I asked Seal-san to come up with a useful sure kill technique. Of course, I also gave my own opinion. I asked it to use turn null, which I still had a difficult time understanding even after it was explained to me, and to make it more powerful. That is how the imaginary blade was born. Rather than slashing through the spirit, this technique eats it. It's the main characteristic of this technique. Because it eats the target and throws it into imaginary space, it has a broken performance that is virtually impossible to defend against. The only effective way to counter this is to avoid it. Even if it is caught with a sword, because it has a one-hit kill effect, the battle ends immediately. One of my aesthetics was that a sure kill technique should be a sure kill technique. It's a matter of course, for my friends, that the second time was not the charm. If a technique is shown even once, the opponent will take countermeasures, so the best thing to do is to not show anyone your sure kill technique until it's time for the actual performance. Well, there was also a way to deal with that using parallel existence like Valgrand, but when it came to a battle between high-ranking spiritual life forms, the main focus was the scramble for energy. In other words, the one who exhausted their opponent first was the winner. Although it was no longer an insta-kill, it was still a terrific sure kill move. At this stage of the battle, I generously revealed my sure kill technique with a strong will to kill Feldway on the spot. And yet, even then, the space made a screeching noise, and my sword was caught. I could feel Seal-san's surprise. I suppose that made sense. I was surprised too. No way to think that the jinx that master feared would be proven true. A jinx? Yes. It's a shounen manga golden rule, that if you use your sure kill technique as the first move, it will be blocked. I couldn't help but burst out laughing in this serious situation. No, did I say that? You're right, I did say something like that. But, there's no way, right? Phew. Let's just forget it. These things just happen. He had caught the sword easily, as if it were a joke, and it seemed to have upset him a bit. I switched my mind and focused on Feldway. Seal-san had already started investigating the cause of the blockage before I did. It would be pointless to attack again until the results were out, but I needed to pretend that I didn't care about that. I decided to bluff my way into a conversation with Feldway. Wow, you blocked that really well. Pretending that I wasn't upset inside, I slashed at him and tried to talk to him. I thought that I would be ignored, but he unexpectedly responded to me. When I think about how attached the Black King, Noir, is to you, I don't feel threatened at all. He's got an annoying way of saying things. I don't really care about being compared to Diablo, but to think that he didn't even bother with my new sure kill technique. No, it's unnatural. I don't think there is anyone who wouldn't feel threatened by it. The only person I can think of is Michael, who is protected by the castle guard. You say that, but in reality, it didn't work at all. At this rate, even the Abyss Annihilation, which I learned from watching Carrera in the Labyrinth, might not work. Feldway's sword appeared to be mythical grade, and Imaginary Blade did not work either. Of course, that meant that the backwards compatible melt slash would be useless as well. In that case, one might think that slashing at the body would be enough, but this was not so easy. Because this Feldway guy was quite skilled. When I crossed swords with him, I felt that Feldway's abilities were considerable. He was as good as or better than me in terms of pure swordsmanship alone. I'd say that he was on par with Benimaru. Since I had become a true dragon race, my physical abilities had increased greatly. It was not a metaphor, but I was now able to move several times faster than before. In addition, I thought that my skill with the sword had also improved, but I still couldn't get to Feldway. In my case, I was able to deal with it, because I had been cheating in many ways, and could even ask Seal-san to take my place, if I had to, but I really felt that I had no chance in a fair and serious fight. In such a situation, the best thing to do was to switch to using magic attacks, which swords could not receive. However, large-scale magic would cause a lot of damage to Leon's kingdom. So, the only other option was to use magic for individuals. The Abyss Annihilation, that I just mentioned, had a destructive power that could affect the entire planet, so it couldn't be used anyway. However, I used it as an example, because it was one of the highest classes of magic in terms of power. When it came to anti-personnel magic, I couldn't really think of anything that could surpass it. Disintegration was barely comparable to it, and anything else would just be guessing. The simple anti-personnel nuclear magic, nuclear cannon, was not nearly as powerful as disintegration. Even if an ultimate skill was used to increase the power, it could be dealt with if the opponent also had an ultimate skill. Even without it, there was no way to make it hit. Fortunately, Feldway was keeping a wait-and-see attitude. If he started to fight back, I wouldn't be able to afford it. At the moment, it seemed that the best thing to do was to try to find a way out of the situation through conversation. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoy it.